Bapanada everyone! From the first steps into the kingdom of Hellenist, right up to the final fights of the game. Hollow Knight is a journey about tragedy, sickness, the corruption of the mind and fading hope. However, there are also characters and moments who are like a light shining into this bleak world, granting us opportunities to breathe and to appreciate the calm. A few of these moments are shared with Hornet, a character who has one of the most interesting arcs and stories in Hollow Knight. But there are many things about her that are shrouded in mystery. Today I am going to attempt and quote-unquote solve one of them. Will Hollow Knight Silksong, aka Hornet's own game and the second game in the Hollow Knight franchise, be a sequel or a prequel? This video is split in two sections, which are on screen right now and also in the description. Feel free to switch between them, however, some statements I'll make might only make sense if they are seen in the context of the entire video. A few days back I took part in a stream about the sequel/prequel discussion with Rusty, relyea, Taco TV, deepdockproletarian and mythreel. The whole thing is up on relyea channel, so please check it out if you haven't already. Before we start, a quick disclaimer. There's no definitive answer out there yet. This is all speculation. So the title of this video, whatever it will be, is gonna be somewhere between an exaggeration and a big fat lie. Anyway, before we get into the video, here's a message from my sponsor. This video is sponsored by Joni's Juice. Joni's Juice is a new startup providing all bugs worldwide with the blue goopy goodness. It comes in two shapes: Lifeblood Original, the original taste, and Lifeblood Protein Shake, now with scraps of pale ore. And remember, if you are sad, near death, or just lonely, drink Joni.
Disclaimer: consuming lifeblood may lead to increased heart rate, fear of dangerous addiction, sudden death, or getting called a heretic by a little dumbass bitch world. Joni's lifeblood original doesn't provide refunds. Consume no risk.
Now back to the video. First, let us talk about evidence that is not even evidence, and if you believe that the evidence is evidence, you also believe that Quirrell is alive, the nailsmith is not into Shio, and that Elderbug is not precious, or simply said, you are wrong. Number 1. Silksong is a confirmed sequel because Team Cherry said so. This is not true, because even though Team Cherry did state Silksong is a sequel to Hollow Knight, they never said it was a chronological sequel. This was confirmed by Lev in relyea video with him, where he says that this was not the confirmation that Silksong takes place after Hollow Knight. It was just a statement to say that it is a sequel to the franchise. Similar to how Red Dead Redemption 2 is a sequel in a franchise sense but a prequel in a story sense, since its events take place before the first game. Another example would be SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, which is a prequel to the Blair Witch Project game from 2019. Number 2. Silksong can't be a prequel because Hornet would be way too young, right? And she isn't wearing any diapers in Silksong footage we have seen so far. This is utter bullshit. Hornet isn't Gen Z, she's more like a grandma that would still kick your ass at Zumba class. Like really, she is one of the oldest beings in Hellenist. Compared to her, Elderbug is still an adolescent young boy putting his edgy posts on social media. But now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about real arguments. The next one is pro-sequel. Hornet is born just before Hera becomes a dreamer, therefore just before the Hollow Knight enters the Black Egg. The Knight returns to Hellenist at a certain point in time after the Hollow Knight's shell cracks, as the Radiance plays a Tekashi 69 song inside the Hollow Knight's head and makes the vessel cry out in pain. The following things have to take place between these events to make the prequel theory correct. The infection spreads throughout Hellenist, especially into Deepnest. The Weavers then return to Farloom, their original home. At this point, Hornet still must be in Hellenist, because after she gets captured by the cult, the entirety of Silksong takes place, and we know that the game will feature the Weaver tribe in Farloom, therefore confirming the Weavers arrived in Farloom before Hornet did, and therefore confirming that Hornet was in Hellenist longer. The Bell cult also has to travel what appears to be a big journey, as Hellenest and Farloom for sure aren't as close to each other as humanity and the collapse of, well, humanity. Then Hornet has to somehow get back to Hellenest, and that before the knight even drags his fat ass to the kingdom. So that doesn't sound likely, but for the sake of this argument we are going to dive way deeper than this in some of the following arguments. But not in the next one, because the next one is also pro-sequel and revolves around Mr. Mushroom. He is a character who appears in Hollow Knight in different locations. He's somewhat of an Easter egg, and after talking to him in all locations, he gets an extra ending sequence as he shoots towards the sky. Two things. First of all, it says to be continued. A continuation would be if he appeared chronologically speaking after Hollow Knight. And he also flies to the right, at least somewhat implying that he is gonna fly to Farloom. Or at least not ruling it out, since Team Cherry could have just let him fly to the left if they wanted to hint at him not being in Silksong. We know that Farloom is to the right of Hellenest in a two-dimensional sense, because of the opening sequence. However, this argument is somewhat weak, as Mr. Mushroom appears to be an omnipresence, as he also knows about Hungry Knight, a game that arguably takes place in another timeline, universe or whatever. So Mr. Mushroom could continue his story by traveling back in time and go to Farloom. However, I won't spend too long on this, since an entire video about Mr. Mushroom would be theorizing to a comical degree, and we ain't here to have fun. We are here to finally set the record straight about the sequel-prequel debate. Now, let's go and talk about losing your mind and memories after leaving Hellenest. This is a pro-prequel theory, but it is incorrect. We'll get to this later. So basically, we know that bugs outside of Hellenest lose their minds. A great example of this is Squirrel. Some argue that the knight also loses his mind, but that is wrong. He has no mind to lose. And the entire theory is wrong because there is someone who doesn't lose his mind. Grimm. The Grimm troop goes from kingdom to kingdom and consumes its fading flames. That would be hard if they were to be called to Hellenest by the knight and then forgot what they wanted to do in Hellenest. So Grimm not losing his mind proves that higher beings are excluded from losing their mind, and Hornet is also at least half higher being, so she should be fine. Especially since the Weavers themselves are also shown to not lose their minds, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to return home. The Weavers are also not explicitly mentioned to be higher beings, so my guess is that certain smart beings are able to withstand the Wasteland's ability to steal minds. So that's all for this section. Let's talk about the endings. Team Cherry said that all endings from Hollow Knight are canon. Therefore, Silksong can't take place after Hollow Knight, because that would mean that they have to choose an ending, right? Well, no. If Team Cherry chooses an exact ending to start off Silksong, it wouldn't necessarily mean that the other endings are wrong. They could just explore a certain what-if scenario. And yes, this opens up the possibility of a Hollow Knight multiverse, so get ready for Marvel to chime in like they haven't ever heard of Poison Rationality and try to buy Hollow Knight in order to make another predictable movie franchise. But yeah, Silksong could also just leave everything a bit more ambiguous. They don't have to choose an ending, they could just start the game right at the beginning cutscene and go from there. Some might say, okay, but if all is left open and no ending is canon and all is possible, another problem arises. How is Hornet captured in the sealed siblings ending? In that ending, she is inside the black egg, sealed away. Well, while the black egg is protected by one of the strongest seals of binding in the game, it surely isn't impossible to break. Think about the alternative, aka what the cult would have to do if Silksong was a prequel. If the cult were to kidnap Hornet while she was still in Deep Nest, they would have to battle almost the entirety of Hellenest to get there, let alone a bunch of stalking devotes and Hornet in an unweakened, beat maybe inexperienced state. So if they would have to be able to pull that off and also capture Hornet and create a seal of binding themselves that no one, except a little butterfly, can break, then them being strong enough to break the seal on the black egg is not that far of a stretch. However, I do realize that the black egg seal is very strong, so I will give the prequel gang some credit where it is due. A thing to mention is that if Team Cherry doesn't use a certain ending from Hollow Knight and Silksong is a sequel, it would mean that neither the Void, nor the Radiance, nor the Flower Power would be able to play a role in Silksong. This, however, is a little problem, because Sharp is known to be in Silksong, which is arguably his homeland. And him being in Silksong and him being almost certainly a somewhat Void-made creature would contradict itself with the Godmaster ending, where the delicate flower defeats the Void. While it isn't impossible that Sharp himself could survive this, even if Void appears to be somehow united, there certainly would be a lot of restraints when it comes to his story, his dialogue, and both his origin and fate. So my guess would be that Team Cherry actually chooses to embrace the Void ending or the Godmaster ending in which the Void succeeds, as it would open a lot of possibilities without destroying anything really. The only quote-unquote problem would be that not each ending would feel equal anymore, but then again, Team Cherry could simply explain this by saying they wanted to explore a particular future. So yeah, Hollow Knight Multiverse, Marvel, Panic at the Disco reference, everything included. And if Silksong was a prequel, we would have similar problems, because then we would already roughly know what would have to happen in Silksong. If all endings of Silksong would also have to be canonical, Hornet can't die in any one of them. And personally, I think that there will be 3 endings, good, neutral and bad, just like in the first game. This would put a lot of restraints on Silksong, and is my counter-argument for prequelists saying that the endings of Hollow Knight are a problem if Silksong was a sequel. It is also a problem the other way around. Team Cherry did some Reddit AMAs back in 2017, and some of the info talked about there is actually pretty interesting. For example, William talks about wanting to make a boss rush mode and an upgraded Mantis Lord fight, and that's what we got a year later. But some of the stuff from the AMA was also Silksong related. And while not a lot was prequel or sequel related, I still wanted to include this in this video. If you do not want to see some other infos as well and only want 100% sequel prequel speculation, then skip to the next part. However, I see this as a fun diversion before we get into the last and final section of the video. And there's also a theory regarding sequel prequel speculation in this section. This post right here could mean that maybe Hornet could return to Hellenist at some point and also play through the kingdom. However, I wouldn't like that, as many of the new systems introduced in Silksong would not work in Hellenist and vice versa. Ari's answers here are just to disguise the fact that Hornet's journey takes place in another new kingdom. This one just again suggests that Mr. Mushroom will appear in Silksong. Now this one is interesting. While some could mistake this as being somewhat of a hint at Silksong being a prequel, it actually isn't. We must remember, Hornet presumably wasn't alive during the kingdom's peak, as she was only born as the kingdom fell into chaos. Therefore, a story featuring the 5 knights in their most powerful state would not mean that it would have to include Hornet at all. It mostly would mean we would get to see what happened to Isma, for example, or whatever happened at the Battle of the Black Worm. This actually supports the sequel theory more. Let me explain this with some graphs. This is the kingdom's timeline. This is the timeline if Silksong was a prequel. So as you can see, this doesn't support the prequel theory, since Hornet wouldn't be there during the 5 Knights prequel. The only possibility is that Hornet returns from Fartham just in time to see the downfall of the 5 Knights. However, as we have seen before, the sheer time frame is more than just narrow. If we look at the timeline if Silksong was a sequel, that isn't a problem anymore. Anyway, a prequel content pack featuring the 5 Knights would still be possible with Silksong being a prequel. It would simply mean that Hornet can't be the playable character in that content pack because she isn't there at the time or wasn't even born at the time. The possibility to play with, for example, White Defender gives us the hope we so desperately need as a people in these dire times. This one either hints at Sode reappearing in Silksong or him getting his own game, Hollow Knight Sode Boat. This one right here confirms that even Team Cherry think that the Hive is underdeveloped, which makes this video I made right here much more valid. Ha! And this one explains itself, as of course Team Cherry didn't tell us right up if Silksong was a prequel or sequel, because If they did, well, then this video would be useless. This one proves that Team Cherry doesn't want to share if every notion of Hollow Knight's initial lore is still valid. And it also talks about weavers, and well, we already know we will see a lot of weavers in Silksong. Since this one is from an AMA from mid-2018, William saying that we might get something Hera related in the future could be a hint at Silksong being a prequel. Though with potential flashbacks, etc., it also could be implemented in a sequel. And this final one is just for all of you people who write Bapanada wrong. This is for you. Now after this quick diversion, let's get back to the meat of the video and also talk about the two biggest arguments, the deciding factors. Each of the sides, be it prequelists or sequelists, have a last strong argument which we need to look into. Up first are the prequelists. In the French translation of Hollow Knight, there's a line that is found nowhere else. Translated, it reads, "It took me too long to get back," and is uttered by Hornet in the first Hornet fight of the game. This alone wouldn't be a big deal at all. It becomes a bigger deal, however, if we also take into account that it was also part of Hollow Knight's initial script, but was cut from the game but still somehow wound up in the French translation. There's even a line saying, should it be in there? As we know, Team Cherry started thinking about Silksong just before releasing the original Hollow Knight, so them cutting the dialogue could mean, according to prequelists, that they didn't want to keep it in because it would tell us too much. This conclusion is flawed, I think, because they could just also have cut it because they believed that the line isn't true anymore, since they started throwing around ideas for Silksong, and might have thought about it being a sequel at that time. In my eyes, both conclusions are similarly possible, but it is undeniable that at some point this dialogue was supposed to be implemented. So for the sake of the argument, I will say that this point of the prequelists still somewhat stands. Anyway, let's get to the sequelists' main point, or rather, my main point. We also have a line in Silksong that quote-unquote proves that it is a sequel. It is during the conversation with Forge Daughter in the demo where Hornet states that she lacks her usual tools, which means she has lost them. Some may say that this is from the demo and is likely to be changed. I don't think so. This is a line that was in a demo that got a lot of attention and was published 2 years after starting the development for Silksong. Lines like this simply can't be an accident. Okay, but some of you still might say, Stizzl, you smart and handsome bug with a huge ego because you write lines like this into the script. Hornet could still have gotten her tools in Hallownest, gets new ones in Farloom and then gets back to Hallownest again. Well, that makes sense if you also think that the Earth is donut-shaped and squirrels are preparing for world domination. If you don't believe that, listen up. We will get loads of new tools and power-ups in Silksong, so why would Hornet get back to Hallownest and equip no tools and only use some of her moves? By the way, her being the princess protector of Hallownest makes more sense if she isn't only in Hallownest for what appears to be a McDonald's shift, but that only on the side. Okay, so you could argue that even though she wanted to test the knight, she didn't want to go all out because based on all we have seen in Silksong, Hornet will get overpowered as fuck. However, it still doesn't explain one thing. Hornet has the spike ball in the Hornet Sentinel fight. She also has the spike ball in Farloom. So if she has the spike ball before coming to Farloom, it makes sense. She gets to Farloom, talks to Forge Daughter about losing her tools and gets a replacement. This replacement is even better than the original, by the way, as it can also be used as a platform. It is also definitely forged from different materials than the one from Hallownest, as it looks different than the one from Hallownest. So, she makes a new tool from new materials that has a different visual style and is an upgrade of a tool from Hallownest, and then after the events of Silksong somehow loses it and all her other new tools, plus all the materials again, and crafts her spike ball again in Hallownest in a weaker state, just so she can fight the knight in Kingdom's Edge? That doesn't make sense at all. Even if Hornet were to lose her mind on the way back from Farloom, which we talked about earlier isn't likely, There's no reason why she would lose everything she has gathered and also every ability she has learned in Farloom. I can't get my head around the fact that she would literally have to trip on, for example, a banana peel and lose everything she owns to make the prequel theory possible. And if she were to lose everything, wouldn't it also downgrade Silksong as a whole, as a lot of the character's growth and abilities would be thrown out the window just so she can be a weaker self in Greenpath and Kingdom's Edge again? Dear prequelists, I don't think you can come back from this one. Hollow Knight Silksong is a sequel. Or at least I'm 99% sure. Or like 95%. Or let's make it 90%. 90% is a good percentage, I think. Thanks for watching. My sponsor Joni's Juice said that if this video gets 5,000 views and 420 likes, they will also sponsor my next video and work on releasing their deodorant collection faster. Now, I do not think that view and sub goals are a good thing. I feel like they feel forced and arbitrary and are used to create some kind of debt the viewer has to pay. Like they are obligated to like and share and hit the bell. Anyway, I am contractually obligated to tell you to do all that, and I am kinda a greedy fuck who throws his values out the window for a couple of views anyway, so do as the juice tells you, little bitches.